Today, everyone, we are here to present our thesis proposal titled Assessment of Values Education Teachers' Competence in Utilizing Social Emotional Learning. This study focuses on understanding how values education teachers apply SEL in their classroom and identifying the factors that influence its integration to improve teaching practices and policy development. This will be the flow of our presentation, and now let's move on to the background of the study. Social emotional learning or SEL helps individuals build self awareness, manage emotions, and develop interpersonal skills according to CASEL 2024. Countries like United States, China, Thailand, and Korea have already integrated SEL into their education system. However, Asia still lacks localized studies and programs according to Young et al. 2023. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, SEL aligns with the goals of values education and the GMRC, which both aim to develop moral and character values among students. However, the lack of teacher training, assessment tools, and clear SEL frameworks results to inconsistent implementation across schools, according to UNICEF Philippines and King 2024. Because of this, there are limited studies focusing on the competence of values education teachers and applying SEL. Thus, this study aims to assess their competence and identify the factors that are influencing SEL integration to enhance teaching practices and guide future policy development. Now, let's move on to the literature review.
Social emotional learning or SEL is a fundamental education approach that evolved from idea dating back to thinkers like Plato that education must balance academics and character development. Its modern structure was formalized with the 1994 establishment of the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, which defines the core process and outlines five competencies, which are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. In the Philippine context, SEL is mandated through the Department of Education policies, particularly integrated into edukasyon sa pagpapakatao. While policies exist, a crucial challenge is the lack of local conceptualization in the SEL framework. To address this, current efforts like the excellent frameworks are grounding SEL in core Filipino values such as pagpapakatao and pakikipagkapwa-tao, making the approach more culturally relevant. The effectiveness of SEL hinges on teachers' competence. This competence is grouped into three vital areas, which is knowledge, skills, and attitude. Teachers must have the solid foundation of knowledge of self-principles, possesses the necessary skills like self-regulation and empathy to apply them in the classroom, and hold a positive attitudes towards self's role in holistic student growth. Numerous strategies are proven effective for integration and utilization, including mindfulness practices, collaborative learning, and reflective practices. These are some of the strategies that can be used to utilize SEL inside the classroom. Yet while strategies and benefits are well known, implementation faces significant challenges. One major critique emphasizes that there is a need for cultural adaptation, and SEL frameworks often focus on students' well-being, not the teacher's own emotional capacity and support. Teachers frequently cite limited training, heavy workloads, and a lack of support as major barriers. Crucially, there is a limited research on the competence of values education teachers utilizing SEL inside the classroom, who are essential in character formation. This study therefore aims to fill the gap by assessing the competence of teachers in utilizing SEL, shifting the focus from just student benefits to teachers' expertise and well-being as the essential factor for the meaningful and effective SEL implementation in the Philippines. And now let's proceed to the research problem that these studies aims to address.
So, our study focuses on assessing the competence of values education teachers in utilizing social emotional learning or SEL in the classroom. Specifically, we aim to determine their overall level of competence and examine if there are significant differences based on sex, years of teaching, and career progression. We also seek to find out how teachers employ SEL strategies, whether their grade level taught influences the strategies they use, and what factors affect their competence in implementing SEL. These questions guided our study in understanding how teachers' characteristics and experiences relate to their SEL practice. Now, let's proceed to the study's conceptual framework.
Now, our conceptual framework centers on assessing the competence of values education teachers, focusing on their knowledge, skills, and attitudes in applying SEL. Through this, we aim to identify the factors that help or hinder effective SEL implementation inside the classroom. Next, for our research design, we will use a descriptive quantitative survey to measure the competence of values education teachers in using SEL. This design will help us describe and analyze their knowledge, skills, and attitudes based on their self reported data. Now, let's move on to the sampling and participants.
As for the sampling technique, the study will use a non-probability sampling technique, specifically quota sampling. This method ensures our sample reflects diverse characteristics of the population. Our total quota is 100 respondents. These respondents are various education teachers who teach good manners and right conduct or GMRC to students in Key Stage 1 and 2 that are grades 1 to 6. We will draw our respondents from 5 distinct cities: Iriga, Malabon, Pasay, Parañaque, and Tablas Islands. And now let's proceed with the instruments.
So for our study, we use a structured survey questionnaire with self-reported data. It contains fixed and predetermined questions to ensure consistency in responses and uses a Likert scale to measure respondents' level of agreement. The questionnaire has four parts: the demographic profile, teachers' competence in terms of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, the strategies they use, and the factors that affect the implementation of SEL. The focus of our instrument is to assess teachers' competence in applying SEL principles, the strategies they use, and the factors that influence their implementation. And now let's proceed with the data gathering procedure.
On this part, we are going to talk about how the data was gathered for the study. The respondents were elementary teachers who teach good manners and right conduct, or the GMRC, and the permission to conduct the research was first requested from the school's division office and the school heads. Once approved, the participants were informed about the study's purpose and assured of confidentiality. Data were collected through two methods: a face-to-face survey, and after obtaining permission from the school authorities, and an online survey distributed via Google Forms through email or messenger. Each survey took about 20 to 30 minutes to complete, and that would be all for the data gathering procedure. Now let's proceed to the data analysis.
For our data analysis, we utilized both descriptive and inferential statistics. Under descriptive statistics, we used frequency, percentage, mean, and standard deviation to describe teachers' demographic profiles, their competence in utilizing social emotional learning, and how these are implemented in the classrooms. This help us summarize patterns and levels of competence among the respondents. For inferential statistics, we applied the t-test to determine if there were significant differences in teachers' competence based on sex, years of teaching, and career progression. We also examined the relationship between the grade level taught and the sales strategies used. Through this analysis, we aimed to identify meaningful trends and relationships that could explain the factors influencing teachers' competence in implementing SEL. And finally, let's talk about the potential ethical issues of this study.
And lastly, to ensure an ethical study, we will provide informed consent written in clear and simple language. All responses will remain confidential, especially about the teaching competence. Additionally, we will also address scheduling conflicts by allowing our participants to answer the survey at their convenience, whether online or face to face. And that concludes our thesis proposal. Thank you all for listening.